I think loneliness hits me the hardest when I talk about different forms of chaos. And it's simply because I believe there's two things people want all across the world. They want to be seen, they want to be heard. And when it comes to loneliness, it takes away the whole someone being seen, someone being heard. And that loneliness state is very hard to get out of because it's something that like every day the loneliness is it feels like you're digging just a deeper, deeper, deeper pit and it's harder to get out of. And even if it's not on purpose, it's not that people that are lonely going, "Oh, I'm lonely," and they're digging further because they want to be miserable. Sometimes that's just what loneliness does. And it's really important for listeners to understand how crucial it is to find your community.
My guest on The Beautiful Side of Grief today is helping people overcome the hurt and overwhelm that comes with chaos happening in their lives. For some, it's sickness. For others, it's incarceration or the loss of a loved one. In fact, it's one of those lists that is endless. Noah Asher is helping people find purpose within their pain and their past through the 3 H's: hope, health, and humor. He is the owner of the Chaos Movement, where they help authors market their books so they can share their message and be heard. Noah speaks at prisons and rehabs across the country, and he has written and not long released an award-winning Christian book, Chaos: Overcoming the Overwhelm. His passion is helping anyone, no matter what their situation, find that hope, passion, and purpose again in their lives. So we're going to have a chat about what happened in his own life to take him on this incredible mission of helping others and what you can do to help navigate any chaos you may be experiencing in your life right here and now. So, Noah, a very warm welcome to The Beautiful Side of Grief.
Yes, it's nice to finally meet you. We've been talking through email, so it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here.
And I'm so glad that we didn't have to reschedule. I had a mishap with my laptop. And so I thought I was going to have to reschedule, but I'm very grateful that I had a great team around me that got me back on track and up and running again.
Yeah, when you told me something happened to your computer, I was thinking, I don't know what I would do if I lost all the files on my computer. And I ended up buying a flash drive yesterday and going, okay, I need to put everything on there just in case.
Seriously, because it's when you least expect it, it happens. But you know what the most frustrating thing is? Is trying to remember all the passwords for all your applications and programs that you use on a new computer.
I believe
But we digress a little bit. My first and probably obvious question is, given that you're still quite young, what happened in your life that has led you on this path of needing to help people recognize and overcome their pain?
For me, yeah, so the reason I wrote chaos and I want to stop and say that chaos, like you mentioned in the intro, comes in many different forms. And so someone, when they hear that word, I want it to be a word that was so interchangeable for people. And for me, I was incarcerated years ago and I lost everything. I ended up trying to take my own life. And then once I got out and I started rebuilding my life, then I lost my father. He passed away. And so it was just one thing after another. And I realized, yes, like every one of these moments were so chaotic. And I wanted to coin that word for just a great way to just describe everyone's pain and confusion in the sense of chaos. And it's been a word that resonates with so many people simply because it means confusion. And I think for me, when chaos struck in the form of incarceration and addiction, it took my life and it made me start to believe the lies of the enemy that life was over, that I had nothing worth living for. And while I was in my deepest, darkest pit, I thought, what do I need to hear? I needed to hear some hope. I needed to know that I would get through this. But then it was once I got through it, the help part of, okay, what do I do now? And then that third H, the humor part, is just something that I realized when we can make jokes about our situation, about our chaos, we own it instead of it owning us. And so I wanted to make sure I added the humor part in simply just to provide that relief, that comic relief. But I say it early on in the book is I don't want it to come across as that I ever am downplaying someone's grief because it's no fun. I can attest to that. It's no
Yeah.
fun at all. But it's to give people another form of recovery through that process.
I think what you mentioned there is very important because I think grief goes hand in hand with any trauma that you've previously experienced in your life. And I often liken a major grief event as being Pandora's box, where the lid is flung open and everything that's happened in your life previously is up for grabs. It's just this chaotic mess. And there's that word again, this that happened. And if we've lived a life like that is what we're used to, and that is the energy we're putting out and attract more of. So that's why we tend to roller coaster from one thing to another, don't
Right.
we? Till we find a different way of managing it. And that's why I'm so happy to be talking to you today. So that was a heck of a lot that you went through. First of all, being incarcerated, and then to come out and then shortly lose your dad thereafter. What were the pivotal things that were life-changing for you that put you on a different trajectory, a different path?
You mean in coming out of my chaos?
Yes.
Yes. So I am so thankful my father was in my life for when he was, and my mom as well. They're both amazing people. And coming out of chaos, I talk about how important it is in the book, how you need people in your corner that will fight for you. And I think about Mark chapter 2, where in scripture, where there was a paralyzed guy who wanted to be healed. And it was his friends who carried him to Jesus and lowered him through the roof. And Jesus looked at his friends and said, by your faith, guys, your friend is healed. And I had great family in my corner who lowered me to Jesus when I was just too paralyzed from my pain to do it myself. And my dad was one of those. And so when I lost him, it was very hard and almost it was a sense of guilt. Wow, he was there for me when I needed him the most. But when he needed me, I wasn't, is how my brain processed it, of course. And that wasn't the truth, but it's just um, how I processed it. And I had to learn that there's more to overcoming my chaos. And so what I started doing was I had to change my focus of going, I'm no longer going to say, God, why me? And I'm going to start saying, God, use me. And that shift in my heart and in my mind of why me to use me was when I could start going, okay, there is purpose in my pain. And I'm going to look for it. I'm going to find it and I'm going to lean into that. And that's how it all came about.
That expression, use me rather than why me. Why me is very much a victim mentality, isn't it?
Yeah.
And use me is really empowering. You can just feel the power it takes. So let's take a look at some of the forms that chaos and pain take, because you have this good expression, there is purpose in your pain, but the pain was never your purpose.
Yes.
So let's take a look at some of the examples of pain so people can recognize, because some people may think, oh, my life's not chaotic. But when you run through the examples, they may just then recognize that, yes, indeed, they could be.
Yeah.
It's us.
And I would start the first one. I took it right out of scripture where I look at the life of Joseph and how he had brothers who threw him into a pit and left him there to die. And then that's when the chaos began for him. And then they decided, okay, we don't want to kill him. Let's just throw him into slavery. So they did that. And then eventually life started getting a little bit better. And then he got thrown into prison. And then finally it was the palace. And so he went from a pit to the prison to the palace. And it was his final words that we see in scripture where he goes, what the enemy intended for evil, God used for good to save many. And those three words are so important to understand, is that God does not only turn things around for you, he's turning things around for you to save many. Not that we can save anyone, but that we can help others find that sort of hope and encouragement through some of the things we've been through. And so the best example I could give is for someone who is maybe struggling with divorce, that they can lean in and they can help other people who have been through divorce. They can walk alongside people like that and go through it with them and let them know, hey, you're going to get through this. How do I know that? Because I've gone through it myself and I've come out the other side. For people with illness, I also have an autoimmune disease called lupus.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's so painful. But where 2 years ago, almost now, I was in a wheelchair, unable to walk, I now run 2 miles every day. And so when I talk to someone who's battling lupus, sometimes I can share that message with them and let them know, hey, there's hope for you. There's good things coming your way. And so it's finding that purpose in your pain. And then when you do, a lot of times you end up finding some sort of platform. In fact, you look at people all through social media now, how effective it is. And it can be bad in a lot of ways, but it's effective too, where people go, I've been through XYZ and now I want to help people through XYZ. And that's ultimately what the goal is, to say, you know what? I'm going to take what the enemy intended for evil and I'm going to allow God to use it for good to save many people.
Yeah, good point. Because this is what this platform is all about. It's using my own experiences to then help others see that there can be a different side to their grief. It's not to minimize any pain that they're going through, but to see that there is something that can come from this, that it can be bigger, better, greater than what they possibly imagined. And it's to look at your pain in a different way, isn't it? It's to look at pain as, okay, I've got this pain. What is the purpose of this? What am I supposed to learn from this? How am I going to grow from this? And it's all about changing your perspective. So rather than sitting in the pain, it's almost like to be a bystander, isn't it? Looking at the pain and
Right.
saying, "Oh, yeah, so what are you teaching me?"
Exactly. And in my book, I talk about Eeyore syndrome. And are you familiar with Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore?
Yes, yes, yes.
But Eeyore, that's what he does. He walks around and he's just, woe is me. The cloud is over me. And I'm sorry, if I were Tigger and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, every time I saw that guy, I would run in the opposite direction because he just knows how to suck out the air of the room. And but when I look back on my deepest, darkest chaos, there are times where I go, wow, I was Eeyore at times. And I'm so
Hmm.
thankful my family did not just stop picking up the phone when I called because they're like, oh, wow, he's going to complain about something or he's going to have something to share that's just not fun to talk about. And I was Eeyore in that moment. And I think there's a moment that we all, when we go through chaos, we're going to have that pity party at some point. That's just to be expected. But the difference in overcoming your it versus staying in the overwhelming is to one day finally get up and go, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to let this rule over me any longer. And
Yeah.
realistically, when I chose the tagline chaos and then overcoming the overwhelming, I was afraid. I didn't want people to think that it's too impossible. You only truly overcome your overwhelming when you shake hands with the president or the prime minister, when you have those big moments. No, for some people today, your big overcoming your overwhelming moment is to go, you know what? I'm going to get out of bed today. I'm going to
Yes.
brush my teeth. I'm going to get dressed. That is overcoming your overwhelming for today. And that's okay. That's great. And it's leaning in and encouraging people to have those moments. It doesn't have to be some big, expansion of a successful, what we deem in the world as success. It can just be the little moment that is overcoming.
Often it is the little moments. It's
Yes.
keeping it at grassroots level and just appreciating what we have here and now every day, because we can't all be great and successful as we see others on social media or,
Right.
but we are great and successful in our own day-to-day lives doing what we're doing if we're taking those steps to say, okay, this sucks, but I'm going to do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's about we can be so asleep to this, because I know myself, I was that in that victim mentality, like complaining about stuff. Why isn't stuff better for me and what have you many years ago? And it's about that was on such a subconscious level. I wasn't even aware I was doing
Right.
it
Yeah.
until I did become aware, until I could look,
Yeah.
okay, this is
That
what
was
you're doing.
that was the same for me in a lot of ways. I thought I almost masked it. I would call it, "Oh, I'm just venting." But
Yes.
really all I was doing was complaining. Like, when I look back now, I go, "Nah, I was definitely
Uh,
trying to" yeah, call it yeah, sums it up.
yeah. Yeah, people, don't be hard on yourself. If you're listening today and going, oops, that sounds like me, the fact is that you're acknowledging that here and now. And I think that is a turning point. So let's take a look at some of the key emotions that can arise from being in that state of chaos, the obvious fear and anger and disillusionment, all those. Let's run through some of those. And can you just wrap some context around them, how they're shaping the current reality and why we need to shift out of that?
Yeah, so when you're in that chaos season, it's hard to call it for see what it is in that moment, just as we discussed with, like, Eeyore syndrome, but when you're in it, there is that fear because it's the unknown. It's not knowing when is the end date of all of when will I feel better? You don't know what that end date is, but it's also fear of knowing how it's gonna happen, not just when, but how, and what things are gonna look like. But it's also living in the what life was versus what it is and what we think it will be. And what I mean is a lot of times when chaos strikes, like, uh we remember how life was years ago and we hold on to that. And because of that, we're missing out on the now and we're
Yes.
missing out on how things can be. And you mentioned I am young, which thank you so much for calling me young. Appreciate that. But for me, it's like it's nostalgia, right? A lot of times if I watch a show that I remember growing up watching going, "Oh, this was the coolest show ever." And then now I watch it and I'm like, "Why did I think this was cool? This was horrible." And it's the nostalgia of it. And I think a lot of times when we're in our chaos, we wanna lean into the nostalgia and we think that, "Oh, how it was so good. Nothing will ever be better." And because of that, we're missing out on what God wants to do in our lives currently. And realistically, you have to break that nostalgia period, in my opinion, to truly be able to lean into your purpose and start moving to a true healing and recovery. And, we just celebrated Easter, the great Christian holiday. And a lot of times we look at Good Friday and we call it Good Friday because of what happened. But we didn't coin that term until after Sunday happened. In the moment on Friday, it was anything but good. And
Mm.
Saturday, we still weren't calling it good because we were in the Saturday season of going, wow, what do we do now? Think about those disciples. They didn't know in 24 hours when Sunday hit, Jesus will resurrect. So they're living in that chaos. They were so confused and so lost. Most of them went back because, and I know this because where did Jesus find a lot of these guys? They found him, he found them fishing again. So they went back to their old way of life. And that's the thing. That's what we do a lot of times. We go into what's comfortable, into what we know versus what we could do. And I think that ultimately is what we have to realize when we're in our chaos is that while right now it may not feel like it's good, one day Sunday will come, resurrection of our purpose, our joy will come. And when it does, we can finally look back at this chaos and go, oh, it was a good Friday.
That's a great analogy, actually. And a lot of people don't think of Easter like that. They think of Easter as the chocolate eggs and things like that. They don't actually see the true meaning behind it and what that's actually telling us and showing us. And a lot of our subconscious is conditioning that's on automatic. And so when you talk about nostalgia, that can be synonymous with all we see as the mountains that we have to try and overcome. And the fear around that. So it's really our perception that changes that, because often what we fear many times, like a large percentage of the time, never comes to pass. So talk to us about the role of fear in people's lives and how that impacts them.
Fear can be dangerous because when you're in fear, it goes to the fight or flight inside of us. And that's what makes it scary, because fleeing the scene is also never good, because you could be running away for something that could eventually be so great for your future. So that's why fleeing is not always the answer, but obviously fighting is not always the answer either. But for fear, it's resting in the fact that you believe that good's coming your way. And I don't want to sound too preachy, so I'm trying to put it a different way. As Christians, it's okay, I know that God's got this, and it's holding on to that. That makes it easier. If you're listening to this and that's not your background, it's just believing, though, that things work out for good as a whole. And that's what we see. It's just, we can see the worst of, in my book, let me just put it this way. Let me simplify it. In my book, I looked at Viktor Frankl, which was a
Mhm.
Holocaust survivor. And when you think about, obviously, the Holocaust, there was nothing good about the Holocaust. But in the end, at the backside of things, Viktor Frankl went on to do wonderful things in the psychology realm. And he built a life for himself and for his family. And that alone shows you that in the moment, it's not holding on to what's happening in the here and now. It's believing that good's coming our way.
Yes. That's what hope is all about, isn't it? It's that belief that there is light at the end of
Right.
the tunnel, that there is something better ahead. And like you say, when we get stuck in our past, we're looking backward. We can't see the light going forward. We've got our back turned to that almost, haven't we? So it's
Exactly.
actually, yeah, so it's actually shifting ourselves and our perception to trust. Now, there's a big word, to
Yes.
trust that things can be different. So, how do we start to do that if we've known nothing else except chaos in our life? Because some people, from the moment they enter this world, live very chaotic lives. There is nothing safe, secure, stable about what they know. So, how do you then start to allow a person to see and know that there is light, there is hope?
It's first off, it's gonna take believing and looking at other victories in the same area as to which you're experiencing that chaos. And what I mean is, for me, when I was incarcerated, I could Google, it can be your best friend and your worst friend. And that the same with illness, right? I can Google why my finger is hurting. And then 3 steps later, I think Google's telling me I'm going to die in 24 hours. And so it can be harmful in that sense, but there's also it's being specific on what you're researching and what you're looking toward. For me, I thought that being incarcerated meant that I could never do big things and to be successful. And so I started researching people who have been incarcerated, who have done good things and big things and have been successful. And I held on to those stories to go, oh, okay, it is possible. It is an option if I fight for it and if I lean into it. And it's the same with lupus. It was like, okay, I can't, there's no cure for lupus, so I have it. This is the end. But then realizing, oh no, you can have a normal life if you eat better, if you exercise. And so it's okay, let me do those things and lean into that. And so whatever your chaos is, it's doing your research and finding people who have been successful outside and have overcome that overwhelming in that field of your own chaos. So that way you have that hope to know that it is possible to overcome. That is very crucial. And then leaning in, like I said, I love hope, help, humor. So I'll lean into the help part and say, then lean into, okay, what did they do? What were some of the steps they took? I'm an avid reader. I love reading a wide variety of books I'll go from the Bible to Viktor Frankl.
Yes, exactly.
The
That
most
was in my
random thing.
mind.
And then like a fiction book on zombies. You just never know what I'm going to read. But I love so many different genres and I love reading, but I also love learning. And it's taking the time to research and go, this is not the end of me. This is truly, no matter how cliche this sounds, this is the beginning. This is my moment to say, these are the cards I've been dealt, but this is how I'm going to take it and I'm going to win. And so it's leaning into it by researching your situation and go, what can I do to overcome and be like people that have gone through what I've gone through? And for the listener listening to this thinking, my chaos has gone on for so long. And for Joseph, what I mentioned in the Bible earlier, Joseph, his life from the pit to the palace, that was 13 years of his life. It was not instant. And in the world we live in where everything's so instantaneous and you're on one side of the country, Helen, and I'm on the other, right? Or, I mean, others, one side of the world right now, I'm on the other side of the world. Everything's so instantaneous. And we think going from pain to purpose is instantaneous. No, sometimes it takes 13 years. I'm sorry, but that's just the reality of it. And one time I was on a trip and we're on the side of this mountain and it started pouring down rain so hard that we were afraid to fall off the cliff. And so we just stopped because the rain was so heavy we could not see in front of us, behind us, or beside us. But then the storm let up and we could see again. So we could drive forward again. And so for the listener listening to this who thinks that chaos is just a downpour on them and they can't see around them and they're just stopped right now and they're stuck, I can promise you one thing. The storm will eventually let up. You will be able to see again and be able to go forward again. So just hold on.
And I love that you said search for the nuggets in the worst of your situation. So like when you were incarcerated, my nugget was being able to go on Google and search out these people that were inspiring you to get out of the situation you were in.
Yes.
And that's it. Like it's a yin and yang type situation where
Right.
there is a duality, there is a balance. With the good, there comes bad. And it's just balancing it all out and being able to shift your perception so you can see both sides of it and how they're affecting you. I wanted to talk about some of the people that you mentioned in your book, Chaos, Overcoming the Overwhelming, because that is a collaboration. You describe it as a collaboration of real people experiencing real pain. Can you share some of the stories that you cover in there?
For anonymity, I obviously changed the names, but what we do is we look in through this book about how, because the word chaos comes in many different forms, I didn't want people to think, oh, this is a prison book or, oh, this is a book
Yeah.
about the loss of his dad. I wanted people to see that stories, this hope part, like we were just talking about, that, hey, look, this is how someone turned their bad into good. And for example, I talk about when I was 16, I had a friend of mine who died in a car crash. And one of our favorite things to do every summer was like this summer camp we went on. And his dad, who was a firefighter, by the way, and was the first person, 911 is the number here in the States, when they called and he was the first person on the scene, he did not know he was pulling up on his son's car accident. He had no idea. So he opens the truck, and our other friends in the vehicle, they survived, but he opens the truck door and he finds his son there as his son takes his last breath. And it's easy to, of course, go through the steps of grief, and he did. We all do. There's nothing wrong with that. But he eventually got to the point where he goes, I remember how much my son loved summer camp and how much of a joy it was for him every summer to do that. And my son may not be able to go to summer camp anymore, but I want other kids to be able to go. And so he opened up a foundation and he started sending other kids to this summer camp that we would go to. And so that's the from pain to purpose that I discuss in the book. Those sorts of moments where it's just so beautiful to see. Another girl I know, her boyfriend was always physically abusing her. And eventually she kept going back to him. It was a long, drawn out situation, but eventually she got out of it. And now she helps other women who have been stuck in domestic violence scenarios. And that's what she's doing. And that's her full-time job now. That's all she does. And that's what's so cool. And that's for even me, like what we're doing with this book is we provide copies of this book. Every book sold none of that money goes to me. It all goes to providing copies of this book inside prison libraries and rehab centers, because we are adamant about making sure that people find the hope and the help they need to get through. I put it this way, is that I want to be the brightest of lights for people in their darkest of pits. And that's what this book is about, is to say, hey, and if this is your story, boom. If this is your story, boom. Here's examples. You don't have to state, if you lost your son, it doesn't have to be a summer camp moment, but lean into, first off, knowing that there will come a day when it's not ever fully over, but it's easier. And to lean into that and go that there is a way to take this pain and find purpose in it all. But also, too, I talk about stories. There was my neighbors whose dad passed away due to COVID in the height of the 2020 with all of COVID. And one of his daughters was a senior in high school. So she was about to graduate. And 2 months, he died. And then 2 months later, she's supposed to graduate. And so it's just moments like that. But I talk about that in my book, and I say, this story right here is not finished being written yet. It's still being written right now. I don't know what his daughter's going to do, but I know it'll be good. And that's another thing for you listener, who maybe you feel like, okay, my chaos just happened. Friday just happened. I'm in my Saturday season because Sunday hasn't come yet. And you're in that Saturday, that my best hope I can give you is to know that your story is still being written, and that you just have to trust the author to write an ending so epic. It's going to inspire not only you, but it's going to inspire everyone who sees your story.
Oh, mic drop there. That is so beautiful, so inspiring. Truly, truly, how you're describing this, what you're saying is what resonates with people. It's a ding ding moment. When somebody listens to this, they can see themselves and they go, so I'm on my Saturday and Sunday's still coming. Yeah.
Yes.
I had an incident I'm going to share with you. I phoned my daughter, and it turned out it was 2 minutes before her accident. So my initial thought was like, oh my goodness, I caused her accident. I was devastated. And then I was able to shift that around to say, how lucky am I that I got to speak to her
Wow. Yeah.
before she
Wow.
died. And we just shifted into a new home, and she was so excited. She just set up her bedroom, and she's going, go check out my bedroom. And so those are the things I remember. So I could focus on, oh my gosh, did I distract her? Well, actually, I drove for 2 minutes. That's a long distance. I didn't cause her accident. But when I first heard about it, I just thought, oh, and I could have stayed there.
Oh,
But Yeah.
Yes, I feel you on that. It's the shoulda, what coulda, shoulda, woulda, those
Yeah.
moments. And
Yeah.
realistically, that word shift, it's so funny. When I first got out of being incarcerated, I ended up getting a job at a very popular hotel chain. And 3 weeks later, just front desk, 3 weeks later, they made me the general manager, which is crazy.
Whoa.
And then I moved into director of operations for this very popular hotel chain all across the world. And I was doing some really cool things. But that's something I would always teach my general managers is that when people come to you and they go, why they're complaining, why is the hot tub not working? The word shift is always the focus. I tell them, I'm so sorry our hot tub is down, but our pool is heated. Like you
Yeah.
shift their focus to something else. And a lot of times I've learned that in chaos too, is to shift it. It's to say this happened, but then shift it and go, you know what? I'm grateful that I have a home somewhere. When I first got out, for example, the beds and being locked up were so small. And I could complain about the craziest things. And I go, well, at least I have a full mattress to sleep on tonight at my house. At least I have freedom. It's shifting the focus in those moments.
I talk about, I've just done this offering, and one of the letters is dedicated to gratitude because I thought I knew about gratitude. I thought I was a grateful person until I really started practicing gratitude every single day of my life, writing down what I was grateful for, 3 to 5 things every morning.
Yeah.
And it was simple things like, here I am. I've got hot water to have a hot shower. I've got a roof over my head. The sun's pouring through the windows. How grateful am I that I have that when there are people in war-torn situations or in countries where, just getting water, doesn't matter about it being heated, but just getting water is a
Yeah.
huge mission. And the power of gratitude and shifting your mindset to be aware of each and every day what is happening for you. So
Yeah.
I'm so grateful I got my laptop, a new
Yeah.
laptop up and
Right.
running, ready for this interview like that. Oh gosh, I just thought there's nothing I could do about what had happened, but let's just give it some grace and give it some time and what will be. And here
Yeah.
we are.
I actually saw a quote the other day. It said something, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember it verbatim, but it was something on the lines of, what if you woke up in the morning and you only had what you were said you were thankful for the day before?
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it got me because I was like, how many times do I actually say I'm thankful for my house? Thankful for my vehicle. What if I woke up the next day and I didn't have any of those things? Then I would start going, oh, yeah, I guess they were something to be thankful for. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for the 18 years I got to have with my beautiful girl. Like people say, yeah, she died too young. Well, yeah, that's a reality I can't change. But what I can change is like, how lucky was I that she graced my world and
Right.
gave me these beautiful memories and events. And it's again that shift. It's a shift
Yes.
in how you choose to look at it. Are you feeling lost, anxious, unsure of how to navigate the loss of your beautiful loved one? Don't know where to head next? Yeah, I get that. Then you may be interested in a letter of hope and aroha to help you find out who you are right here and now and how you can navigate that without being on that emotional roller coaster, feeling out of control. That's a feeling I really disliked after Tal and then Adrian died. So I've developed an 8-week support program where each week you get an email of what worked for me, as well as other tried and true tools to help with grief. It's a beautiful, calming, healing resource that I think you're really going to like and that you can use in your everyday life to find out what works for you and what doesn't. And the great thing is, you find yourself feeling stronger and more in control so you can work out what you want life to look like going forward. So if this sounds like something you would like to check out, head over to my website or check out the link in the episode notes. You're looking for a letter of hope and aroha. Can we explore, Noah, loneliness a bit more? Because although we're living in the age of technology and have access to so much, I believe we've created so many more lonely people because of this that are disconnected from having real live relationships and connections with others.
I think loneliness hits me the hardest when I talk about different forms of chaos. And it's simply because I believe there's two things people want all across the world. They want to be seen, they want to be heard. And when it comes to loneliness, it takes away the whole someone being seen, someone being heard. And that loneliness state is very hard to get out of because it's something that like every day the loneliness is it feels like you're digging just a deeper, deeper, deeper pit and it's harder to get out of. And even if it's not on purpose, it's not that people that are lonely going, "Oh, I'm lonely," and they're digging further because they want to be miserable. Sometimes that's just what loneliness does. And it's really important for listeners to understand how crucial it is to find your community. In fact, I was talking to someone the other day. They told me they had no sort of addiction in their life, but I said, "That's okay. But you don't want to go to church? That's fine. But I recommend finding a Alcoholics Anonymous is here, what we call them in the States, like the AA meetings." I
Mhm.
said, "Go to one." And they're like, "Why? I don't struggle with alcoholism." I said, "Go because there's community there. There's
Yes.
people who will go." I said, "You'll meet people that are just, first off, they're the most gracious because they go, I have a past of my own, so I'm not going to judge you for yours, first and foremost. But secondly, too, they also know what it feels like to be lonely. And so they're going to welcome you in and just go, sit, eat some cookies with them, hang out." And so I recommend that for people all the time. But that's something that we have to be the most combative when we are in a season of loneliness. That's the most combative we ever have to be, is to
Yeah.
fight that loneliness and to find community. That's one thing I'm, as a Christian, I believe so wholeheartedly that the enemy is against is us finding community. And in The Lion King, have you ever seen The Lion King?
Yep. Yep.
That's what Scar does to Simba.
Yes.
Simba is watches his father die. And because Scar knows, okay, now that Mufasa's out of the picture, Simba is the heir to the throne. And there's nothing Scar can do to change who gets the throne. So what he does was he tells Simba, he puts him in an identity crisis of going, "Hey, you're a murderer. You're a failure." And then he gets Simba to run from his family and his friends and to get him secluded. That was the whole goal of Scar. In fact, it was him and the hyenas. They were like, "Should we chase him?" He's, "No, he'll die. He'll die in the wilderness alone." That was what Scar wanted for Simba. And I think a lot of times, no matter what led us to that season of loneliness, you have to understand it was in some ways a group of lions is called a pride. And I thought it was ironic that in some ways it was Simba's pride who took him from his pride, but it's going back home. It's going back home and maybe not to literally your physical mom and dad home, but going back home to your community and finding um, those people that can lift you up instead of tear you down. It's a lot easier, of course, to find people that will tear you down than lift you up. But it's being very aware that, okay, I'm lonely, but I don't want to stay this way. And then
Yeah.
being proactive.
I love that term, finding your tribe, because your tribe represents those people that get you, where you don't have to explain. They're just there. They understand. There's no judgment there. And like you say, whatever it takes, just find those people, gravitate towards them, because they will be the ones that will help lift you up and provide that light for you. And
Right.
that's so beautiful. Yeah. The other thing I want to have a chat with you about is we're often looking to the outside for validation of ourselves, for acceptance, and to overcome. We think that it happens on the outside. I'm a great believer that we have everything we need within us. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, this is a great segue since we just talked about the Lion King. But
Mhm.
so here you have Simba, and he thinks he's a murderer. He thinks he's a failure. He goes off Hakuna Matata with two of his friends, and then that he meets, and then he was still not ready to go back home. He still considered himself the murderer of his father. He still had those thoughts. And that's what chaos does. It leaves us in that identity crisis where we start to believe that we are what we've done or we are what someone else has said about us. That happens a lot on social media right now because it's so easy to just leave a comment and people don't
Mhm.
understand the repercussions of that a lot of times. But I digress on that one. But the it was for Simba, he woke up the moment he looked up in the sky and his father goes, "Simba, remember who you are." And that's when he woke up. And I think for us, we have to stop and remember who we are. Because when you're incarcerated, every moment of every day, they're telling you, "Come here, inmate. Here's your number. Come here, number 111." And it wasn't. I'll remember when I first got out, the officer was taking us somewhere, and he goes, "Hey, you're no longer an inmate," and I just sobbed because I was thankful, but then I was like, "Who am I now? How do I find out who I am?" And it was like relearning who I truly was. And I think that is the same is true when it comes to divorce. A lot of times relationships, they'll split and you're left going, I wonder if I would have lost weight, if I could have kept my partner, those sorts of things. We question all of these ideas of who we are, but who we should have been, what we could have been for our partner or for our life to not go down this path of chaos. But all at the end of the day, it all comes back to remembering who we are. So yeah, I agree. It's inside of us. And if you ever seen Lion King on Broadway, the song says, "He lives in you." That's what it is, though. It's inside of us. It lives inside of us. And it's leaning into that and going, you know what? I'm no longer a lost cause. I am a found child. And it's holding on
Uh,
to those things.
I'm a great believer that we were all born perfectly imperfect, that there is no accident. We are who we are, experiencing what we're experiencing. And we just need to navigate and find our way through that. And like you say, just keep pointing north, finding that North Star, that purpose, that hope, that light, that
Right.
happiness, and that because that is our journey. I believe all the rest is just superficial.
Yes.
But once we find our purpose, everything seems to just fall into place. You're just I would say, Noah, that I bet you couldn't walk away from what you're doing now because you know so much that this is your purpose, this is your passion, this is what you need to be doing, no matter how tough it is some days for you.
Yeah.
Would I be
I would
right?
most definitely. And what's funny is this is not what I thought my life would be, nor
No.
what I wanted my life to be. Then I had to go, I cannot change what has happened.
Mhm.
So I'm going to shift. I'm going to go, what is the silver lining, Celsius, that moment where I lean into that and I go, I'm going to now find out how I can help others. And that's why I'm so adamant about saying, with your pain, there's purpose. And then it builds a platform for you. And that's what I'm living in right now is that platform part where I can share with others, just like you're doing, Helen, you're sharing with others. Um, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a time. And when I was locked up, I never thought I'll just hang in there. One day I'll be on podcasts all the way in New Zealand. That was never the focus, thinking that something like that would happen. But
Yeah.
now I'm adamant about letting people know who are sitting in their cell right now to go, what? I can one day sit on a podcast with people from New Zealand. But it's having that moment of going, I can do these things. I've seen others do it. And if he or she can do it, I can do it. And so it's
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's providing that hope for people first and foremost. But I'm very grateful. It's a lot easier for me to be grateful with my situation. Like I said, the food was horrible. So if I go to a restaurant and I have like a bad experience, I go, it's better than prison food. It's a lot easier for me in some ways, but no, I am very grateful every day that I get to do what I'm doing now. And it would not have happened if I didn't go through my season of chaos. And now in my book, I talk about how the third section of the book is called the aftermath. And it's okay, once the storm dissipates and the enemy retreats, a lot of times we're left with rubble. We're left to rebuild. And for me, I sat on this book, Chaos, for a while going, and sat on my purpose for a while going, I'm not going to publish, I'm not going to start doing all this until I feel as if I have fully rebuilt. And then I was like, dude, you're never going to be fully rebuilt. You're always growing. You're always rebuilding. There's always going to be something to be done. And so I realized, no, I'm the rebuilt I need to be to do what I'm doing now. And then we'll worry about the rest later. And so that's
Yes,
what
book
I leaned
two.
into. Yeah, that's book two. But no, it's so important. And I tell people that all the time. It's just like when someone's who is an addict, I'm not recovered, I'm recovering. And
Yeah.
that's the same about with loss. When I lost my dad, he, there's a hole that will never be filled by him again on this side of life. And because of that, it goes, I'm never fully rebuilt, but I'm rebuilding, or I'm never fully healed, I'm healing. And it's
Yes.
making sure people understand that because
Originally.
yeah, yeah, and there's good days and bad days, just like I use the storm analogy a lot in this book, but I feel like chaos is that downpour, that tsunami sort of moment. But that doesn't mean when you're rebuilding, you don't still experience little rain showers along the way.
Or the rainbows.
Yeah, yeah, there's some beautiful rainbows for sure.
Yeah, you don't get those unless you've had the rain.
That's so true.
Yeah. And I'm the way I look at life now too, since losing my daughter and then new partner, I just look at it that I am blessed every single day because out of the worst has come a life that I never knew could exist. It's better in so many ways than I could ever have imagined. And that's the flip side. That's what
Right.
we don't often see where we're going into. But if we stay the course and just keep taking one step after another, that's where we end up. And it's
Yes.
beautiful. It's beautiful. Hey, Noah, fabulous conversation, mate. Just
Thank you.
absolutely wonderful. So, what is it that we haven't covered that you would like to leave our listeners with before I finish up with a couple of questions for you?
More than anything, listener, I just want you to understand something. You will get through this. That's what I want you to understand is you will get through this. There will turn, there will be a turning point in your life where you'll go, you know what? Friday was good because of Sunday. And you're going to look back at this moment and go, it wasn't great, but it was good in the sense of what came out of it in the end. So hold on and know that the storm will dissipate and you will be able to see forward again.
Ah, perfect. Noah, what is the best thing that has happened to you so far today?
Today,
Yes?
ooh, I got this photo hanging behind me. I got that put up finally, that, and then I am finishing up one of my degrees, and then I'm working on my master's, and I just hit the send button on one of my final papers.
Oh,
And then, yeah, and then I am also finishing a new book, and I just got through, I think, some of the the rawest, realest chapter I've written yet. And so I'm very thankful.
great. And for the listeners, the picture that he's alluding to just before that he pointed to, that obviously you couldn't see, is the picture with the word chaos on it. It's an umbrella. There's a big rain cloud with rain pouring down, and it's being sheltered with the umbrella. And it's a pretty cool picture. It's very simplistic, but so much depth to it.
It's all the words. It's my cover of my book, and it's all the words of chaos, and it feels like it's raining down upon you. And so you're going to see those words like rejection, like loneliness, like lost and anxiety, and just different ways in chaos comes, and the way it feels like it's just pouring down upon us.
Okay. Good picture. Okay. What is something that you are most grateful for?
Through all that I've been through, I talked earlier about my family and my mom, who still lives in the same city I live in. Through all the chaos we've been through and with the loss of my father, it's been a time for us to connect and grow in a deeper way. And she's a big part of my life. She texted me earlier. She said, "You want to get dinner?" And I'm like, "Yes, let's get dinner." So those moments, to be able to have that, it's that shift focus to go, man, I'm sad that I lost my dad, but it's shifting and go, I'm so thankful that I have my mom.
Yes, yes, yes. We have an expression here in New Zealand that when things are not going so well, they turn to custard. How do you pivot out of moment that are looking a little bit on the darker side for you? What do you do? Do you have any go-tos?
When things are going south,
Yeah, and you want to pivot out of them? Is there anything
yeah,
you do? Yeah.
humor's a big part of my life. I like, for me, even when I write, my book has those funny moments, but then it just boom. The reviews all say we'll laugh and then we'll cry in the same chapter. And that's the story of my life. Like, that's me in a nutshell, is laughing and crying in the same day, in the same moment sometimes. But I turn on The Office is a big part of my life, a TV show called The Office. That, and just anything with comedy, I love to turn on and just take myself away. Another thing I do is music. It's just, for me as a Christian, though, I choose like praise music.
Mm.
And it's taking that moment and just shifting and saying, like, all right, God, this, I'm praise you for this, I'm praise you for that. And then before you know it, you're like, wow, what was I upset about?
Yeah, exactly. It's lifting your energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, powerful, powerful tool. Thank you for sharing those with us. Noah, how can people reach you?
If you go to my website, my socials are on there. Everything starts at the website. That's my hub. It's thenoaasher.com.
Great. And I'll have the links to your website in the episode note and that.
Yep.
I just want to thank you, Noah, for taking this time. I know it's your early evening there, so
Yes.
I'm very grateful that you've taken some time out of your evening to come and talk to me today and to share your story of overcoming so brilliantly yourself. I mean, how you've pivoted your life from where you were to where you are now is truly the inspiration for so many and the
Well, thank
provider
you.
of hope for so many. And yes, a privilege to share your story and have
Thank you so much.
yeah,
I love what you're doing, and it's so important for people to understand, whether they look at my chaos or yours and go, if they made it, I can make it. So thank you for what
yeah.
you're doing.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. If there's a topic you'd like covered, click on the Beautiful Side of Grief at gmail.com link, or go into the beautifulsideofgrief.com website, where you can also leave a review. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button. And if you know of somebody who could benefit from this episode, please share. And until next time, please be kind to you and take good care.